that, but or would have written that way. But my goal was to put that down kind of as a foundation message of where we're going to then build on for the rest of the year. And so we may go back and kind of refer to parts of it again, but for the most part we're going to be moving on to some other topics. And I wanted to spend just a few minutes, let's pray, and then I want to spend a few minutes going through our class syllabus and talking about where we're going to be heading for the rest of the semester at least, and then we'll get into where we are the next semester. So who'd like to pray for us?
Is there a key for this?
The key, the key was Matthew's paper, which he got 100% right.
Okay. Is it in here?
I've mixed it in. I think it's accidentally mixed in with those papers down there.
I'll see if I can find it.
Either that, or I've set it in the other room. I just saw it a few minutes ago. If you are watching online and you would like to have a copy of the Worldview test, you can email me and I can send you a copy of that. Our students took a true-false test last week, and I'm in trouble with my words, aren't I? And it wasn't a difficult test, but it was a pretty good review on where we've covered. You probably, Susan, if you're looking for the test grade for that, you probably could just look at it and get them right yourself.
Probably. Oh, here's Matthew's.
It's not that hard. You found it? Okay, yeah. I thought I had it there this morning. All right, who'd like to pray for us? Matthew, should you pray for us? Or? Sure. Okay, pray real loud so people on the video can hear it, okay?
Lord Jesus, thank you for this day, God. I pray that we enter in this class, Lord Jesus, in this different part, different section, that you would help us to expand our learnings, Jesus, and that you would just help us to learn about the way we should view the world and how we can form that on our own, God. I pray you just give us strength in this culture that seems to be falling apart, God, that you would just strengthen us to live for you, Jesus, no matter what, God, and that you would just be our strength and our guide every day. In your name we pray, amen.
Amen. All right, you talk about a class that is right in the middle of where the world is at right now. This Worldview class is right on the topics that are in the daily news. How many of you watch the news even just a little bit? Keep up with what's going on in the world. What do you think the biggest news stories are right now going on, just in general, like in the world as a general? What do you think are the biggest news stories? Ebola, shootings in our region, particularly the Ferguson shootings that are causing from racial type issues. ISIS. The elections? Yeah, the elections are a big deal right now. Okay. How about the Middle East? The things going on in the Middle East. We have a great deal of warfare going on. And how many of you, when you look at some of these issues, one of the first things you say is, okay, that's just too hard for me. Sorry, I don't get that. It's just too complex. The story's been going on so long that how would a person even figure it out? Do you feel that way so much about, I don't feel that way so much about the elections, do you? I mean, I feel like I can wrap my hands around that one. But when you start dealing with this ISIS thing, if I said to you right now, okay, I want you to explain to me exactly who ISIS is and what this whole thing is about. How many of you feel confident you can explain that? Anybody? No? Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? How about the Middle East? How many of you feel like you could really explain the players in the Middle East and what's going on with Israel and what's going on with Egypt and all this stuff? How many feel like you could do that? Now, I feel frustrated by that sometimes. Do you? Because in some ways I'm thinking, I know that these different hot spots of the world have everything to do with us as believers. We know Jesus is coming back. We don't know when. We know that we've been promised there's going to be wars and rumors of wars, and so you've got religious wars going on, but it's hard for me to figure out. So I'm hoping that what's going to happen is through the course of the rest of this class, we're going to be looking at the different worldviews. We're going to be looking at the biblical worldview and comparing it to the other worldviews. So this class, you'll notice that you don't have all the students in here because we're split actually our group into two, and the younger kids are going to be studying something else. I'm going to be helping you guys take some of the understanding about worldview and applying it, hopefully from some of the other classes that you've been looking at. Do you have a copy of what I asked you to print? Looks like this. The comparative worldview chart. Did you guys print that off? Okay, you have a couple copies you can pass around. This chart you need to keep in your notebook. This will actually be the overview of where we're heading for the rest of the year. I got this. In fact, in previous years here in this co-op, we have taught from a course done by Summit Ministries called Understanding the Times. That black book that I'm sure some of you around in this room have seen before. The Understanding the Times curriculum is excellent. I cannot say enough about how good it is. And this is their chart that they use as like the summary chart in the curriculum. Now, one of the things that I've found, though, about the Understanding the Times, as we've taught it here, is that sometimes it's so detailed and so complex that it's kind of like when you learn chemistry. How many of you are in chemistry right now? Okay, how many of you are really enjoying chemistry? You've already taken chemistry, or you're in chemistry? You've already taken it? Okay. Some people just really, did you enjoy chemistry? Okay, so we have a chemistry person over here that really enjoys it. Are the rest of you guys enjoying chemistry? No, we're having struggling over here with that one. How about you guys? Do you like sciences?
Sure.
You like science? Okay. How many of you really like more things like history and social studies and current events and English sort of stuff? How many of you lean that way? How many of you lean toward math? Okay, you got the math people, you got the science people. All right, now what we're going to be talking about in here, in some ways, crosses along all of those different disciplines. When you go to college, you don't see this so much when you're in high school, but when you go to college, what's one of the first things you have to determine once you pick out a college? What do you have to determine once you get there? What your major is going to be. What does that mean? What you're studying. And you know, then you'll get complex, and you look in the catalog at the school, you'll have different departments. And so you'll have, name some of the departments that you know are at SIU. That's our university here locally. Talk real loud so they can hear you. What?
Business.
The business department. Excuse me? The nursing department.
Agriculture.
Agriculture. Architecture. Department of Justice. Engineering. Okay, you've got these different departments, okay? And in these different departments, the psychology department, there's a department out there called the sociology department. You could go to the law department. You could study pre-law because they have a law school. And so when you're looking at all the different disciplines of what people can study, there's really, in the whole field of higher education, you can boil it down to there being about 10 major disciplines. Now, these are not, you know, the only ones out there, because one that's not on here is this one called language. That's one that's pretty much omitted from this list. But if you're looking at this comparative worldview chart, what Summit Ministry did in a very profound way is they looked at the different schools of thought, or these different topics that you deal with. Now, when you're in kindergarten, you're just dealing with what? What do you learn in kindergarten? Reading, writing, and arithmetic. I mean, you're just into the 3 R's. You're just doing the basic stuff. You don't really sit down and have like a political discussion with a 5-year-old too much. That's not the main focus of your education. Although, interesting enough, as a 5-year-old is already learning basic things about politics. Let me give you an example of that. How many of you have siblings in here? Okay? The way siblings work in our house is they use a lot of politics. They're negotiating, and they have one group that's lobbying for something to happen over this other group. And because there's a lot of politics, we're learning how to organize ourselves and make the government move, which is the system of the house. Okay, so really, you can think of it that some of these things we learn intuitively. In other words, nobody really sets you down at 5 and said, I'm going to have a political discussion with you. But in essence, you're learning some of it. Does that make sense? Same thing about psychology. Have you had a psychology class? Any of you taken psychology? Okay. No, not formally. You've not studied it. But some of the basic things about learning and about the way our mind works, you absorb it. When you get to out of high school into college, though, if you go to John A. or you go to SIU, you'll have to take a psychology class. It's going to be a required class. So when we look at the area of worldview, now who can give me a good definition of worldview? And I'm sorry to say that one video that I had marked out for us, they removed from the web. That's a problem with links about worldview. But somebody give me a definition. What is a worldview? We learned that in the first part of this class.
In which you view the world through physical and spiritual eyes.
Okay. We said it's much like the lens of which you view, and not just view it, but the way you gather data. It's almost like it's the way that when you put this on, it's the way you will take data in, experience it, reason it, and make decisions. That's all based on your worldview, how you see the world. Okay, if you notice this chart that I gave you, on the left side of the chart, there is a list of these different fields of study. And we notice that most in higher education. Let's list those off over here, the ones they have on here. They have theology, which is, who can define theology? Yes, the study of God. Okay? How about philosophy? What's philosophy?
Study of knowledge.
The study of knowledge. It comes from what group or what ancient group do you think of when you think of philosophy? Primarily. Greek thought. Okay? Philosophy comes through the reasoning systems. Okay? Philosophy. How about ethics? What is ethics? The view of what is right and wrong. Okay, it's a study of what is right and wrong and how you're going to figure that out. You know, every group of people has to figure that out. Somebody who is a cannibal tribe, in their system has some sort of ethics. Now, we're kind of looking at that and say, well, they don't have any ethics. Well, yeah, they do. We just don't agree with their ethics. They've got some basis by which they make a decision. How about biology?
Study of life.
The study of life. Okay, we think of that as science. Psychology? Study of the human mind. Study of the human mind. Sociology. What's sociology?
Study of
human
life.
interaction.
Yeah.
The study of human interactions and how people gather together in a group setting. Okay, that's sociology, how we behave interpersonally. Okay, how about law? It's kind of primitive. What is law? It's like the rules, how we're going to get along here. Politics.
Study of government.
Yeah, think about political science. You're going to study not just the law itself, but you're going to study how people are going to organize themselves for political thought process. And then down here, economics. Matthew, you've been doing some stuff in economics. What is economics? It's a study of
The exchange.
financial systems and money. Okay, it's a study of how you're going to understand the financial systems and the money and how it operates in a group of people. Everybody has an economic system. Even if you're in bartering, you have an economic system, right? Because you're going to have to somehow value your goods and figure out how to exchange them. And then the last one down here is the discipline of history. What is history?
Study of the past.
Study of the past and what's happened. All right, so you could go to the university and you could take a course in each one of these. And in fact, except for the issue of theology, which is very interesting, at our secular university, they wouldn't view it this way. But theology is your study of whatever your God system is. So even though it's a secular university, they have some core classes that kind of bounce into that area of theology because they're teaching about secular humanism. We're going to learn about that. That's the theological bent. So every college you go to, how many of you are considering going to a Christian school? Okay, you're thinking of going to a Christian college. Okay, will they have some sort of a theology course in that, do you think?
Yeah, but mandatory.
It's mandatory, right? Okay, the interesting thing is those core classes that you take your freshman year and your sophomore year, every university will call it the University Studies Program or the core classes. Any institution can define which of these they think is most important. Now, there's some standards across the board. Everybody's going to have you do a science. But, you know, it depends on which university as to what their worldview is, as to what the science will look like. Okay, if they want to be accredited, there's certain core disciplines they have to study. But in the area of theology, would it make a difference whether you went to a, maybe like a Baptist school versus you went out to Utah and you were at Brigham Young University? Who knows what religion Brigham Young University is? Mormon. Okay, do you think that their theology class might be kind of different? Absolutely. Okay, so they're going to see a different worldview. Now, look at the top of the chart up here. You'll notice that there are, count how many there are up there. 6. This is where I just feel like Summit Ministries has done just an incredible job, and they're really the best at it, anybody I've seen. They have gone and looked at the entire world, not just the United States. You know, we get so bound into our local thinking and our national thinking. They went and looked in the world today. Now, I have to say this. They went to the Western world. They did not go to the Eastern world so much. They did some, but you can still find some things in here that can be comparative that you still need to fine-tune out. So this a lot goes with the Western world except you'll see, we'll interact with that as we go through here. So there's some other Eastern thought that's not in here, particularly in the Western world. When I say Western world, what do I mean? You'll take a class in college sometimes called Western Humanities. You know what that means? What's Western and Eastern? What's that? It's the hemispheres, and its Western thought is going to have a European view, so to speak, from its history. And if you're in Eastern thought, you're going to be focused on what continental view?
Asia.
Asian. That's kind of a big way to look at it. It's like a European origin versus an Asian origin. Now, this is primarily going to be looking, it does deal with the Asian origins, but it's going to be even more specific to the Western point of view. Now, you've got the crossover things in here, though, because you've got Islam. Is Islam Eastern or Western?
Yes, it's one or the other.
I couldn't really tell you because it has some hybrid crossover, but it has a lot of Eastern thinking mixed in with some Western ideology, and that's what can be very confusing about it. So if you look at these competing worldviews, I guarantee you these competing worldviews are big time in action in our community here in Carbondale, Illinois. I mean, we are such a microcosm. We're a university community with a lot of international, but a lot of people who study various world thoughts, and we're a very liberal university town. So you see a pretty good cross-section of all these different viewpoints in here. Now, if you'll notice at the top, the first one listed is Christianity as a worldview. The second one on the sheet is Islam. The third is secular humanism. The fourth is Marxism/Leninism. The fifth is cosmic humanism. And the sixth is postmodernism. Now, that's a lot of isms, wouldn't you say, in there? How many, when I say those words, you could now feel like you could define those for me? Do you feel like you have a working knowledge of each of those words? Anybody? No? Somewhat? Those of you who went through Light Bears, what we did in our Light Bears course is we laid the foundation to understand this chart. So you understand some of those vocabulary words, but you don't know all of them. You two guys haven't been through that, and so I'm going to be teaching it as if you haven't been through it. But here's the interesting thing. On this chart, you'll see how they gave a word description or a phrase description for how each of these worldviews would view each of these different philosophy or these different disciplines over on the side. I encourage you, this chart right here can be your best friend if you're going to go take courses at the college level in America right now. Why would I say that?
You can just match them up and figure out what the problem is.
Yeah, you're going to have a professor. Okay, so you're going to sign up. Let's say you go out here to SIU to take a class. Let's say you go to SIU and you are required to take, in the science department, you're required to take something that's in the life science and something that's in the physical science for most majors because that's in the university department. So let's say you go in and you sit down in your biology class the first day. Okay? You're going to open the biology textbook and you're immediately going to thumb through the pages and you're going to be asking yourself this question. The author of this textbook had a worldview when they wrote the textbook. Is that true or false? Yeah, because every human being has a worldview. So the data that they're going to give me is going to be filtered through the author's worldview. At the same time, the professor who's teaching is going to have what? A worldview. So the quicker you can identify the worldview of your teacher and also the material they're using, the quicker you're going to be able to figure out what's going on here. Because as a student, the odds here at our university of winding up in the classroom with somebody who has a worldview of Christianity, what would you say the odds are here in our community? Who's the teacher having a worldview of Christianity? You've got a few out there, okay? The problem is many of them are Christians, but they do not have a worldview of Christianity. Remember, we learned that in the first part of this class. Is that possible? That somebody could be a Christian, but remember they're not operating out of a biblical worldview. So you go to the class, and I've had, sometimes people go out to John A. and they come home and say, good news, I have a Christian teacher. But I've been around here long enough to say, okay, we'll find out. They say they're Christian, but do they have a biblical worldview? That takes time to sort out, because you're going to start to see that unfold as they express different ideas. Now, what your job here in this class is I want you to become so familiar with these different ideas on this chart that by the time we get to the end of this class, you're going to be able to size somebody up. Not that we want to pigeonhole people into little places, but we have to do that in our mind. We have to. We can't make sense out of the world if we can't do that. I want you, Keenan, to be able to go into a class and have a confidence that you're going to be able to sort through the information and say, okay, I understand how to interact here because this person is actually a cosmic humanist. And so when I have to write a paper for this person, I better understand that they're a cosmic humanist. And, in some ways, if you want the grade in the class, do you have to play the game? Sad, isn't it? But that's the choice we have to make. How far can we go playing in a cosmic humanist field when we want to get a grade from somebody? And boy, that's a place for our ethics to sort out, If somebody wants to tell you to write a paper on why there is no God, are you going to have a moral issue with that? Yeah? So, hopefully it doesn't come to something that
That'd be impossible. There's no evidence whatsoever that there isn't a God.
You could write a paper, but you wouldn't believe your paper.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're in a real problem. Now that's what's happening to college-age students. That's why we have 1% in the millennial generation. Is they hit college and this happens to them. Okay? This hits them and now they're being expected to sort through, study, and memorize data and then regurgitate it back to people who do not have a biblical worldview. And you know, you can survive that. You can live cross-cultural as long as you stay in your culture and recognize when you've crossed out and you don't compromise yourself. But you're going to need some wisdom. So can you see what the purpose of the class is? How many think this could be very helpful? This takes time. You don't just read this chart and have it. Because, you know, we could sit here and read all this and then say, okay, got that, I'll go do that. You're going to need some help listening and reading through. So this is where I want us to take what we've done in the past on the understanding the times, and we're going to take it a little more practical. If you'll notice your syllabus, go over your syllabus, class discussion on Summit Worldview Chart. I just gave you some discussion of that, and one of the best ways that we're going to do this is we're going to dig right into the first worldview, which is Islam. We're going to talk about that today. Fairly relevant, would you say, in our world today, to understand Islam. You'll notice that each week I will feature a different worldview on this chart. Next week, what are we featuring? Nope, we're skipping over because I want to go to another one before we get to that one. I'm taking them out of order for kind of a strategic reason. We're going to go to Marxism-Leninism. Very important. Here's your homework next week. This will take you approximately 90 minutes to watch, so budget yourself enough time. I want you to watch the movie. It's called Grinding America Down. Okay, it's called Grinding America Down. It's a controversial movie. I believe it explains a lot right now of why we're seeing Marxism-Leninism that's actually operating within America. And you're going to understand a lot about the principles by watching this movie. Be ready to discuss this controversial movie in class as we seek to understand the ideologies of Marxism-Leninism in our world now. See, this is not a history class. How many of you have studied Marxism? Sometime. It's not a government class. In those, you're going to get all the definitions. I'm going to help you with that, but what I'm going to do is all those pieces that you've heard about it. How many of you have heard of communism? Okay, you know historically, what nation do we think of when we think of communism? We think of two nations.
Cuba.
We think of, okay, maybe three. You think of
Cuba.
Cuba,
USSR.
USSR, China. Those are the three big ones, okay? Now, in our world history classes, we've been learning about all of that. This is a synthesizing class. You're going to have some knowledge base coming from all different places, and we're going to put it together. Now we need to understand. I'm not going to be able to give you history on all these things. I'm going to help you to understand how does a person who has a Marxist worldview, how do they think? You see how that's a different question? Like today, we're going to talk about Islam, but I'm not going to be able to give you a complete lecture on the history of Islam and how to worship in an Islamic way and where the history of it is and where all these conquests happen. How many of you have studied Islam? You've done some study of it. You need to. We absolutely need to be an expert in Islam right now. And so maybe I should suggest that in the mom's class. As the more I'm seeing this, we don't understand our history, we're doomed to repeat it. What we understand from history will give us wisdom to know how to respond and react to what's going on around us. Right? So we need to study that, but here's the purpose of this class. In this class, I want you to understand how an Islamic person thinks. Now let's break this down. Do we have anybody here in Carbondale who is Islamic?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, tell me about Islam here in our city. What do we know about it? In our city. Just what do you know about Islam here in our
It's
city?
increasing at a rapid rate.
How would we know that?
They're having lots of children.
Huh? What's that?
They're having lots of children.
They're having lots of children. Okay, here's one way we know it. We have a mosque. Do y'all know we have a mosque here in town? Where is the mosque?
Just drive away.
Isn't it?
Yeah. It's right across from Addicts Park. The mosque was built, I don't know, Susan, how many years ago would you say that mosque was built?
I don't really know.
I'm just kind of guessing that at least in its current structure, you think it's been there maybe 5 to 6 years, 7 years, maybe 8 years. But
Yeah.
it's been a little while, but the interesting thing is, if you ever go over it, it'd be interesting. Drive through that part of town on Sunday. Drive through there on different days of the week. It is so crowded, you cannot get through the streets. They are adding on to the mosque. Now, we used to travel over in that area because of our ministry. We used to drive the buses down there, and the guys would come home and say, guys, you wouldn't believe, it is so crowded over there at the mosque, I can't even hardly get the bus through the road over there. So we're just diagnosing from the fact that we drive around it all the time that, boy, they're attracting more and more and more and more cars, and they're adding on to their facility. So we know that there's an active Islamic community here in town. Islam has a thought process. I asked you to look at this, if you'll notice on here, remember now when you do my syllabus, I'm giving you what we will be talking about in class, so you prep the date that it says there. You were to get the comparative worldview chart. I now gave you a copy in your hand. You were to read the Colson article. The Colson article did not work out for us, okay? So that one didn't work for us. And then the other thing that I wanted us to begin working on is this, and you know what? I don't have it on this one. How many of you have the link to this other thing that I'm going to show you right now? You had it.
But my question was, so those are things we're supposed to have for done right now, right?
Right. Uh-huh.
So the things, so like
Next week,
whatever's on
Grinding
the list for
America
next
Down.
class, we're supposed to finish it.
Yeah, that's what you're supposed to do next week. It says October 16th. Your homework for that class is watch the video Grinding America Down. It's available on Vimeo. It's also on YouTube. So you can find it in two different ways. And so if you have problems with the link, I watched it just the other night. One of them, I can't remember one of them's a little better quality than the other. But if you have trouble, you can try either different medium on it. Okay?
Which link did you need?
I can't remember which one I used, but it's right here. You can find it on Vimeo. That's the name of it. Grinding America Down. You can find it on YouTube. The link that you need right here. Alright, I'm going to do this. I've got the link right here in front of me where somebody went in. Write this website down, please, because this is going to be a really good website for us. They took the things that are on Summit Ministry, this big, thick textbook, and somebody went in and took notes on it. Don't you like it when somebody does your work for you? Okay? Go to this website called allaboutworldview.org. allaboutworldview.org. It's great.
We were supposed to read that for this week.
Yeah, we were, but we didn't quite get the word out there. So, allaboutworldview.org. Now, when you get there, the site's going to look like this. Ooh, I dropped that. It's going to look like this. It's great because it's built on this chart. But somebody took the textbook that's very thick and complex and hard to use, okay, and they summarized it into a few paragraphs. So when I ask you to read about a particular worldview, like next week we're going to be learning about Marxist-Leninist, I'm going to be using some of the notes out of here, and this is where you're going to get some of your information to be able to understand these words that are on the chart. See right here, it has a word there under Islam, that the theology of Islam is what? What is it called? Theism, but it says the word Unitarian. Well, I'm over here saying, well, what's that mean? I don't know what a theism Unitarian is. But I need to know so I can go to this website and in a very succinct way it will help me to understand that. Now, you will be responsible in this class. Guys, I've done you an immense favor that you don't quite understand. Because that Understanding the Times book that we were going to use was very, very difficult. In that it had a lot of work and a lot of tedious work. So you are going to have to work in this class, but I'm going to help you to where when you get done with this, I am praying you're going to know this thing. I mean, you're going to know it. Not just be able to regurgitate it for a test, but you're going to know it in your heart. You're going to understand it, and you'll be able to judge it. But these words, if you don't know what these words mean, and you don't know how to apply it, then you're going to need some help. Does that make sense? So now I'm giving you a website that will replace the whole big giant textbook that you would have to be fishing through and taking notes and trying to figure out. Does that make sense? Laid out very simply. So go to allaboutworldview.org. I clicked on the Islamic worldview. And so today I want to spend the next part of our class, we have about 20 minutes left in our class time. I'm going to go through and we're going to talk about the Islamic worldview. Now, I have to tell you, why is this important for us to understand right now?
Know how to defend your faith from them.
To know how to defend our faith. That's one very good reason. What else?
Because their goal is to change America right now.
Their goal, it's very difficult unless I understand the Islamic worldview, and the more I've studied this, I'm very, 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 underline very as many times as you can, concerned that many people in our government right now have not stopped to study what the worldview of Islam is. Because ISIS right now seems like they're just kind of violent people out of order. But what ISIS represents, and what many in the world understand and many don't, is the ISIS organization has taken this worldview and taken it very literally, and they're walking it out. So in our minds, we're just thinking, tell the ISIS people to be nice. okay? And that we can settle them down. Stop that. It's not nice to behead people. You know, I mean, like we can just talk them out of it. We don't understand their viewpoint, so therefore we can make some wrong conclusions and predictions about how they'll respond. You see what I mean? So these kind of things are, they're kind of life and death for us right now. So let's look over here at Islamic in the worldview system. The Islamic theology, I'm going to read you this little paragraph. The Islamic worldview is grounded in Allah. Allah is a name for God. Okay, now I'm going to ask you a question. It's going to be a trick question. But wrestle with me because it's almost hard to know how to answer somebody. True or false? There is one God.
False.
True.
Very interesting, isn't it? Okay, now let's say how I ask it this way. True or false, there is one true God. Okay, now you moved, didn't you? Okay? In the Islamic point of view, Allah is their God. Most Americans, when you ask them that question, will view that we are worshiping the same God. It's crazy, but it is so true. Now let me tell you, Allah and Yahweh, Jehovah, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, not same God. Okay? Not same God. It's a false God. Okay? Not the same. But this is a big confusion in America. So, we need to understand that. They have a God that they've named Allah. He has a central prophet named Muhammad. In fact, he's called the ultimate and final prophet. It's very important you understand. He's the ultimate and final prophet. Everything rises and falls on Muhammad. And he has a book that's called the Quran. Okay? The word of Allah delivered through Muhammad beginning in about what year? Muhammad. When did he get this? 610. That's a name you ought to know. Write that down. That's a number you ought to know. 610 AD. 610 AD. 610 AD. Islam means, get this, submission to Allah. That's what Islam means. Okay? What's Islam mean? Submission to Allah. And a Muslim is one who is submitted to Allah. How many of you had trouble figuring out whether you're talking about, use the word Islam or Muslim? Islam is the religion. Muslim is one who is submitted to Islam. Does that make sense? In the same way that we use the word Christ and Christian. Okay? Or you could say Christian and Christianity, depending on how you want to break this out. Okay. About about 1/5 of the world's population is Muslim. About 3/4 of which are non-Arabs. How's that for startling? Okay? Our friends at Summit Ministries have helped us explain the basics of the Islamic worldview across 10 major categories. Now, here's what they're going to talk about. In the Islamic worldview, it is more than a religion. Islam covers all aspects of life for its followers. Many religious scholars treat the Islamic worldview as if it is just a religion with 5 simple pillars, meaning 5 simple things. But that's a wrong interpretation. Islam encompasses all of the worldview. It is a worldview. It is not just a religion, it is a worldview. Okay? That's going to be real important as you look through this. Okay, let's look then at how an Islamic person would view theology. Okay? Theology, I just pretty well told you. What are they going to view? There is one God. Do they have any problem with that idea? No, of course not. One God. They would call him Allah, with Muhammad as the central central messenger. Muslims also hold that the God, but would they believe that our God and their God is the same God? No, because here's how it goes. This is the phrase that they are taught to say. There is no God but God, and Muhammad is the messenger of God. That's a phrase. That's the profession of faith. Now, it has these Arabic words that I can't pronounce here, but if you converted to Islam, that's what you would say. You would make that decree. Once you make that decree, you've converted to a new way of life. Now, you know the young man who killed and beheaded the woman in Oklahoma City? He was converted to Islam. There was a beheading in Oklahoma City about 2 weeks ago. Shocking. He was fired from the workplace because he was trying to proselytize, meaning trying to get people to convert to Islam. He had been in prison, and he converted to Islam while in prison, or else shortly before going to prison. He became radicalized. What does it mean to be radicalized? You ever heard somebody say you're a radical Christian? Ooh, that's scary. Are you radicalized? Some people would say we're radicalized around here. What's that mean?
You actually do exactly what you're supposed to do.
You actually believe the book and do what's in it. Honestly, that's what the word radical means. You're at the foundation and you're doing it. Ouch, that's going to be tricky because everybody talks about these radicalized Islamic people, these Muslims that are radicalized. Well, they're orthodox and they believe it totally. They believe the Quran totally. He became radicalized in prison. So he was an American man. He took this oath. When he took this oath, his entire worldview changed because he lined his world up with this. Get it? And he never went out of the country. It's happening right here. Okay? So, the central beliefs, we can get in and talk about this, and you can read this yourself. The central beliefs is that first, Muslims believe in Unitarian theism. They reject the Christian doctrine of the Trinity and say they believe it's blasphemous. But the interesting thing is they still believe there is Jesus. In fact, you can see mention of Jesus in the Quran. But they do not believe that that it would be impossible for him to be God. Okay? Because of their beliefs about it. How many know what the 5 pillars? Their theology is practiced through 5 pillars, and some would say 6. Who could name the 6 pillars of Islam? Okay, a person probably ought to know these because they influence the worldview of someone who's a Muslim. Let's write them down. The first pillar of Islam is the confession of faith. Okay, I just told you. Here's what they say in Arabic. There's no God but Allah, and Muhammad is the prophet. If a person pronounces this confession with sincerity of heart and mind, then he is born into the Muslim faith. Do you get it? We would say you're going to confess with your heart, confess with your mouth, believe in your heart that Jesus is Lord, and you will be saved or born again or whatever. Different churches will call it different things. We're saying something happened on the inside of you. If you want to go into the Muslim brotherhood of believers, you're going to need to make this profession of faith. So the first is your profession of faith. The second is prayer. How often does a person who is Muslim pray? 5 times a day, facing where? Mecca. Okay, why Mecca?
Because that's what reflects the origin.
That's the holy city in which they believe it's prophetic. See, it's not just historical, but it's prophetic for them. We'll talk about that later. Third is fasting. During when? Ramadan. This involves refraining from food, smoking, and sexual relations during daylight hours, though these things may be enjoyed after sundown. So we need to understand, during Ramadan, there's a great deal of revelry that will happen after sundown. It's only during daylight that they have to abstain. 4th pillar, almsgiving, giving to the poor. Muslims are expected to give 2.5% of their annual capital to the poor, either directly or through their charitable organizations. So there are Muslim charitable organizations. 5th pillar is pilgrimage. What's that mean?
You have to go to places of worship.
You're going to go to Mecca at least once in your lifetime, or you can kind of get out of it if you don't have finances or your health doesn't permit it. But it's a goal to get to Mecca. In fact, it's part of their faith. They want to get there. Many would say that there is a 6th pillar. Anybody know what it is?
Holy warfare.
Jihad.
Yeah.
Jihad. Jihad, which has 2 facets. First is the battle against temptation and sin for the sake of self-control. People who call themselves moderate Muslims will say that's what jihad means, that you're battling against yourself in order to have self-control. But the literal interpretation is the battle against anyone who opposes Islam. Okay? The battle against anyone who opposes Islam. So if you look at the history of the world, you're going to find that Muslims have forcefully advanced in different eras of time to wipe out anyone who does not believe that, what is their first pillar? There is no God, and Allah is the prophet. Okay? Alright, let's go over here now. Then that's a little bit about their theology. Philosophy, supernaturalism. They believe in both faith and reason. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. Like Christianity, Islam is a revealed religion. Therefore, some adherents consider the fusion between Islamic faith and discipline and philosophy to be impossible. So they believe that there is something called supernatural. Okay? Now, some viewpoints that thinks there's no such thing as supernatural. But they do believe that. They believe there is something called supernatural. And in fact, they believe in angels and they believe in this other, and I don't know how to pronounce it, but they affirm that there's some other kind of a creature that's kind of dark. Okay? So you've got a similarity between Christian worldview and an Islamic worldview in that we both would believe that there is a supernatural, correct? Okay, look at the comparison here. You can see that there's some, you see how there's a comparison? We're going to compare everything over here to a biblical worldview. Do we believe in supernaturalism? Yeah, we would define it a little differently, but we do believe that. Okay, now let's do it on here too. Ethics. What do we know about ethics for a person who's Muslim? What do they believe about that?
Moral absolutes.
Okay. Now wait a minute. Isn't that
That's
on
the
our
same
chart?
also.
Isn't that the same on our chart? Okay. Now talk to me about the world right now. Moral absolutes.
Are unpopular.
Okay? But there are people who are converting to Islam right now because they believe there should be moral absolutes. In fact, this man right now this is just like blowing my mind. But the man who's up next to be beheaded by ISIS, you know how they've always got one person that's kind of in the holder, and they're talking about it, and they're saying if you don't do this and you don't do this, we're going to behead him. Well, the next guy up, there was an interview released about him. He's a convert to Islam before he was ever kidnapped. He's a humanitarian aid sort of guy who went over there, and he says, you know what, I'm cool to die. It'll be all right if I die. I'm listening to this guy. He's an American. He converted to Islam, and he converted to it on the attraction of moral absolutes. So right now, in America today, we've got Christians who claim they're Christians, but remember those statistics we learned in the first thing. Do they believe in moral absolutes? Crazy, isn't it? So some people say we need to get some Islam in here because we need somebody with some moral absolutes, because those people just kill you if you don't believe what they believe. So in a crazy sort of way, their religion looks like it'll restrain and give us the thing we're yearning for, which is the God hole in people's lives that they need moral absolutes. Does that make sense? So moral absolutes. Let me get back here on my little chart. Philosophy. How do I get back over here again? This is a little bit tricky to get over here and find it. Hang on a second. If I can click on the first one. Islamic worldview, moral ethics. Okay, ethics, that's where I was. Let me get back to this link. So, under ethics, they believe that, that this guy summarizes Islamic morality as follows. The concept of morality in Islam centers around certain beliefs and principles. Among these are the following. God is the creator and source of all goodness, truth, and beauty. Well, if we all thought it was the same God, that'd be pretty good, wouldn't it? Problem is, they don't believe the same God, okay? 2, man is a responsible, dignified, and honorable agent of his creator. 3, God has put everything in the heavens and the earth in the service of mankind. 4, by his mercy and wisdom, God does not expect the impossible from man or hold him accountable for anything beyond his power, nor does God forbid man to enjoy the good things of life. Number 5, moderation, practicality, and balance are the guarantees of higher integrity and sound morality. 6, all things are permissible in principle except what is singled out as obligatory, which must be observed, and what is singled out as forbidden, which must be avoided. And 7, man's ultimate responsibility is to God, and his highest goal is the pleasure of his Creator. Does that just sound totally out of line if a person encountered that who was looking for moral absolutes? Really doesn't sound all that. I mean, some of it's a little off, but not just like, oh my goodness, I've got to run away from this. Guys, this is one reason why Islam is growing in America right now, is people are yearning for somebody to say there's an absolute. Does that make sense? Okay, now let's go over here to the area of biology. What do they believe?
Creation.
Okay, is that similar to us?
Yeah.
Okay, now it's not going to be the same, but it's similar because Christians and Muslims share some common convictions regarding the existence of God and the creation of the world. The Islamic view of creation differs from biblical revelation. For instance, the creation of the world, the Islamic view of creation, the Bible says 6 days. The Quran asserts otherwise. In some passages, creation is said to have taken 6 days, but in other passages, it describes the creation as taking 8 days, 2 plus 4 plus 2. So, you're going to see a lot of overlap in here. You're going to see a 24-hour day or ages. As the Christian community is divided, whether there's an old or a young earth, Muslims are divided as well. Interesting, huh? While many more traditional Muslims take the reference of days as 24 hours, some contemporary Muslims hold the days of creation for long periods of time. Now watch out here, because see, now you're going to get some people over in a science class, and you're going to think that maybe, since they're talking about there being a creator, you can get sucked in. Really, they're Islamic. But you're going to find out, uh-oh, we have something in common. All right, so really, there's quite a bit in here. There is some overlap in view. Okay, let's go on to the next one, because it's going to start to get pretty different when you get down here. All right, now, under mind-body dualism. What is mind-body dualism?
You have a spiritual part of you and a physical part of you.
And it's actually embraced inside the body, okay? Now, there's a big difference here. What's under psychology, what do we have as the big difference?
Fallen or unfallen.
Okay, fallen or unfallen. Okay, big difference. The Christian view says that man was created in the image of God, but that he fell. But in the Islamic point of view, no, they do not have any recognition of the fallen nature of man. That's not a doctrine that they're going to hold to. So does that make a big difference?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Let's go on here, because that one could get into studied a long time. But let's look at the issue of sociology, because now we're going to start to break apart pretty quick here. Sociology. All right, in the Christian worldview, we believe that there are three spheres traditionally: the family, the church system, and the state system. Where do we get those three spheres of sociology? Where do we get those? Okay, in the Bible. Okay, we take it from the Bible because we're building, of course, our worldview from the Bible itself. So the three spheres: family, church, and state. But if you're going to look in the Islamic point of view, what are you going to see there? Somebody read it to me.
Wives.
Polygamy, which means
More
more than one wife. The mosque and the Islamic State. Now, very important we understand Islamic State. What does that sound like? The ICE of ISIS, okay? IS, Islamic State. Now, in our Western way of thinking, we're trying to figure out that ISIS is trying to build a country. They are not trying to build a country. They are trying to enforce what they believe is their role to the Islamic State. It supersedes boundaries. It supersedes any kind of like sovereign group. They're trying to usher in their second coming. Okay? So they're working on the Islamic State. Do you see that? Now, how many think this is probably important stuff that Americans could understand right about now? Can you see why this is important stuff? Do you feel like right now that most people around you have a good handle on this? Huh? No. I feel like I don't have a good enough handle. I need to study this. Okay? So I'm going to encourage you. I'm reading some of this to you. Get into this worksheet. Spend a little time even as a family. This is great discussion around the dinner table, because as you start to see this, you're going to start to understand what's going on in the news. Okay, let's look over here then at what they're saying. Like Christianity, the family, worship of God, and the state are central to Islamic teaching. Somebody over here said lots of children. They have a positive view on having children. Unlike the American church, which has slipped from that, they have traditionally large families. Okay? But the worship of God and the Islamic State are central to Islamic teachings. Of course, there's substantial differences. Most Muslims practice monogamy. The Quran permits a man to have 4 wives upon certain conditions. Regarding the worship of God and the government, Islam does not distinguish between social institutions and the state. It is a comprehensive reality. That's why ISIS says we are coming to America. We think, oh, they're trying to invade and take over our country. That is not their worldview. What is their worldview based on what you're seeing here?
beliefs are coming to America.
The what?
Their beliefs are.
Their beliefs, because they believe, and we're going to get down here into the next page down here, they believe that's their job. They believe that there is one God, remember? And his prophet is Muhammad. And their job is jihad, to destroy everybody who doesn't believe that. That's their worldview. Now, does ISIS make sense to you? And they're trying to build what's called the caliphate. want you to look that word up and define it for me next week. C-A-L-L-I-P-H-A-T-E. The caliphate.
Can you spell it again?
C-A-L-L-I-P-H-A-T-E. The caliphate. Okay, what is the caliphate? Do you know? Okay, I'm going to send you guys a link to a little article that helped me to understand some of these terminologies. But they are working to build their caliphate because their goal, sift down to politics, is global Islam. That is their view, that Islam should be global. They think that's their job. All right, we're going to stop there. We've not yet talked about Sharia law. You need to understand what it is. How many of you know what Sharia law is? Do you know? Okay, we're going to define that next week. We may get a little bit off in some of these lectures because some of them are going to take us longer than others, so it'll be okay because some of them won't take us long. So don't get messed up in your head thinking we're way behind. Just do what I ask you to do. Once you look up caliphate, I'm going to send you a link to a brief article that's going to help you to find that definition, and then I want you to watch that video because we'll finish Islam and we'll get started on Marxism. Okay? Interesting stuff, huh? Now, when you watch the news this week, I'm expecting this to start to work out for you. So be ready to talk to me about the things you see in the news. By the time you get to the end of the class, you're going to be ready to analyze the news. All right? Thank you. See you next week.